I am Dream Queen. You're in the cab with me. Thanks for rolling. We're reading from The Prophet by Kahlil Gibran. 101 years old this last year in 2024. Still relevant today. For those of you who aren't familiar with the show, you can learn more about this and catch up in the archives on linktree.com in the cab radio. Check it out. And then you can also find links to learn more about Kahlil Gibran and also get access to free ebooks, HTML websites, whatever, where you want to read this. It's in the public domain. Absolutely free access out there for you. You can also get books from your favorite bookseller. There's a gajillion of these out in the world for good reason. Thrift stores love to sell this book. I think most people that I run into, they're like, oh, I got this at a yard sale. I got this, in this little used bookstore. I got mine in a little used bookstore in Berkeley, actually a quite big used bookstore in Berkeley many, many years ago. And yeah, it's just great stuff. And it's about a person named Mustafa, who is a traveler and a sage and the prophet. Al-Mustafa means chosen one, and he has a gift. He's been in exile in the land of Orphalese for 12 years. Did I tell y'all about the research that I was doing on something else and 12-year exile came up again? I don't know if I told you. Anyway, go check out the archives. If it's repeating, listen to it again. But no, I was just going to interject here and say I was doing some reading on the Mahabharata, and this is the story of Arjuna and the Pandavas before, when they had to go to war. Yeah, I think I did tell you about this. And it's the story surrounding the Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's downloading of celestial wisdoms to Arjuna and the rest of us here on the planet on how to pretty much exist. But in the Mahabharata, those cats were exiled for 12 years as well, a couple of times. And in our first episode on the Prophet, on the introduction, where I talk a little bit about the mystical numbers and, what 12 might mean in the Bible and things like that, but I didn't really touch on the Hindu side of things. And I just started thinking, exile is, I think, an important issue to talk about. I have talked about this consistently when we do the backstory on this, how important immigrants are, how important refugees are, how important how we show up for immigrants and refugees is. Like, that's a big thing for both sides. It allows us to be fully in our humanity when we show up compassionately to a stranger, for a stranger. And not only as some sort of charitable, virtue signaling kind of like, oh, let me just be nice for because that's what you do. And also, because that's great. People need help and resources and everything. And also open our hearts up and understand the true meaning of what being a giver could give. Hate using the same word in a row. But how we evolve toward higher, more pure versions of ourselves, of light energy. When you enter into a reciprocal relationship with someone, whether they're family or friend or a stranger, it's like opening your heart up to learn something and to grow. So Al-Mustafa's ship was returning. Oh, then that's what made me think, well, what if he was in exile? Like, I'm just making up stories and it doesn't really matter how he got there. But when I look at my own life and I look at how long it's been since I've been home to see my mom in DC, and I really started thinking about the work on myself that I have been doing over the past few years, and especially just most recently. And, I don't know if his work I could have done not in exile, if that makes any sense. And the way that hermit type people just really need an environment of remoteness and reflection. And this year, y'all, is a 9 year, and 9 is represents the hermit in the tarot, and then is, numerologically, it's the culmination, the end of the single digit numbers, which is what we count in numerology, except when we're not talking about the master numbers, the 3 master numbers. But anyway, 9 is the culmination, the moment where we want to integrate the wisdoms that we've gathered up till now. And it's already a week and a half barely into this year, and I know we all doing some major reflections at this point. And if you're not, good for you. Ignorance is bliss. I don't know what to say. But to all my people who are reflecting, if you check out the image of the hermit, he's holding a lantern. That entity is holding a lantern, and they are, I believe, facing all the decks are different, but whichever direction your hermit is facing, whether it be toward the past, looking directly at you on the card, or toward the future, it's really about shining a light on the things that are in the darkness, and taking that wisdom and sharing it after you integrate it with others in your community. That's a big part of it. It's a big role of the sage, is to come out. And so in the hermit year, and especially in the winter now, you may be feeling isolated or a little depressed, just too much introspective work. I was thinking about that. What is that song by the Eagles? I know. But don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. Come on, baby. But we do have to go in and look at it. So anyway, Al Mustafa is looking out and seeing his ship coming, and he's ready to go home. So on the way down to the seawall, all the people have word is spread through the little village, like words in little villages do. And the folks put down their tools and things and started walking with him. And it's like, oh, you're leaving. Please stay. And he's like, I can't stay. I got to go. And Almitra, the seeress, comes out of the temple and meets them all in the square and says, hey, would you share what you've learned about us while we wait with you? We can't hold you, but we want to hold on to your wisdoms. This is all my paraphrasing. It's so lovely. Not as poetic as Kahlil Gibran's words. Please check it out. So anyway, people start to ask, and they just throw out a thing. Tell us of this. Tell us of that. And we've covered a lot. Now we're on a trilogy that I announced last week. Is very clearly a trilogy on laws and freedom and justice. So last week we did Crime and Punishment. That's available on In the Cab Radio. Now, a lawyer said, but what of our laws, Master? And he answered, you delight in laying down laws, yet you delight more in breaking them. Like children playing by the ocean who build sand towers with constancy and then destroy them with laughter. But while you build your sand towers, the ocean brings more sand to the shore. And when you destroy them, the ocean laughs with you. Verily, the ocean laughs always with the innocent. But what of those to whom life is not an ocean, and man-made laws are not sand towers, but to whom life is a rock, and the law a chisel with which they would carve it in their own likeness? What of the cripple who hates dancers? What of the ox who loves his yoke and deems the elk and deer of the forest stray and vagrant things? What of the old serpent who cannot shed his skin and calls all others naked and shameless? And of him who comes early to the wedding feast, and when overfed and tired, goes his way, saying that all feasts are violation and all feasters lawbreakers. What shall I say of these, save that they too stand in the sunlight, but with their backs to the sun? They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. And what is the sun to them but a caster of shadows? And what is it to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But you who walk facing the sun, what images drawn on the earth can hold you? You who travel with the wind, what weather vane shall direct your course? What man's law shall bind you if you break your yoke, but upon no man's prison door? What laws shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's iron chains? And who is he that shall bring you to judgment if you tear off your garment, yet leave it in no man's path? People of Orphalese, you can muffle the drum and you can loosen the strings of the lyre. But who shall command the skylark not to sing? That's Kahlil Gibran, the prophet, on laws. Wow. Deep breath. So, let's talk a little bit about it. I think a lot of it is very self-explanatory. We're here to work together. You can find me on In the Cab Radio, Instagram, or Facebook. Shoot me a message, and we can chit-chat about it if you want. I feel like this is obviously a commentary on the world we live in today, where we look at lawmakers and the change of regime that we're going into right now. I think it's a very useful way to phrase the mentality of a tyrant. It's a pitiful thing. It's a pitiful thing to be so caught up in your own ego that you have to torture other people and bend them to be like you. What about this ocean? Here we go again with animism. Like children playing by the ocean who build sand towers with constancy and then destroy them with laughter. But while you build your sand towers, the ocean brings more sand to the shore. And when you destroy them, the ocean laughs with you. Verily, the ocean laughs always with the innocent. This reminds me of the north wind from the other day on Close. The north wind laughing at our ignorance. I see the eternal ocean. I was just talking to Bad DJ yesterday about fractals, and that everything being contained in the smallest portion of itself. I'm still not really understanding it, but I understand it, but I don't know how to really articulate it. Fractals, right? And we were having this ocean drop of water in like the ocean, whole of the ocean contained in a single drop. That's it. The whole of the ocean contained in a single drop. much like the entire beach contained in a grain of sand, right? I think of us being sand, just an infinity of souls going out into eternity and coming back in. But for those whom life is not an ocean and man-made laws are not sand towers, man-made laws are not sand towers, but to whom life is a rock and the law a chisel with which they would carve it in their own likeness, period. That's the laws and rules that the world that most of us spend most of our time in. It's a little bit easier when we're out here in the remote places, but we still have to work with the laws of capitalism and materialism, which is a yoke. It's a yoke. And as we talked about the chapter on houses, what manifested as comfort in that chapter comes in as a guest and stays as a master. Comfort. It's important for us to figure how we live within our means. I heard an astrologer talking the other day about Saturn in Pisces being a good placement and time for us to reflect on what we consider to be success. And that's been a big conversation as inflation and the cost of living goes up, but salaries stay the same or get lower, and more people become homeless, houseless, shelterless. It's almost it takes a lot in our culture to separate material goods and a person's worth. And if you have less material goods in our American culture, you can watch someone's self-esteem just spiral, let alone from basic necessities like certain comforts, like just heat and a shelter and food and things like this. That's not really even comfort. That's just regular. Like, you can't live without those things. You can't exist in this avatar, in this meat suit, in this very fleshy thing without food, shelter, clothes, and, the ability to clean yourself. All of these things is just basic baseline for living. So when we go along with the yoke that is set upon us by these masons who chisel in those stone tablets, looking at you, Moses. No, those is decent. Those rules are decent. When you chisel those laws in their likeness and we go along with them so that we can not just get what we need, but then we get an appetite for other things more and more and more, because the void of that self-worth thing. So we become that ox who loves his yoke, but we hate the yoke, but we love it. We bear the yoke. And they got us with that cost of living thing. They got us with the cost of living. However, the other half of this poem, I'm just going to say real quick, I appreciate Kahlil Gibran trying to humanize everybody. Martin Luther King did the same thing, trying to humanize. We try and give a little credit to these tyrants. And we say, they stand in the sun. They're human beings, but they have their backs to the sun. It's important in these times to bend toward the light. We talk about that too. As if you choose. Because you can be on the shadow side too. Everybody got a part to play. We all not there yet. We all are still acting out our karmic cycles. Some say that's what makes Earth so special, is we get to come here and do that. But we have to remember who we are in order to be effective against these chiselers who dwell in shadow, and they seem so powerful, because of the system that they put in place. But the second half of this poem, it makes me think of civil disobedience and the advocacy of civil disobedience, to put it frankly. If we look at Kahlil Gibran, I'm not going to go too far because I don't have a lot of the notes in front of me regarding who he was as a person. This is all a free flow. It's been a week for me, just like I'm sure it's been for most of y'all. So we're going together here. But I'm blessed to be here. Gibran did a lot of work. He was an immigrant. He came here when he was but a boy, 12 years old, with his mom and sister. And so he was still, though, active in Lebanese politics. And he wrote a lot of letters and editorials, published pieces in Arabic and English regarding the struggle of Lebanese people for autonomy, even and especially at that time in the 1920s and 30s. So if you've done, and we know we're bombing the crap out of them right now still, okay? And we're talking about areas where people have been involved in wars for generations, and we can say, hey, look at how horrible it is. These people can't get out of civil war. But again, the big powers, the Western powers manipulated these people after World War I, used them, exploit already civil problems in the area and just made them bigger, and we're still in it. This is all that old and older than that, but especially this old that the United States and Britain and some places, Russia, have been manipulating the Middle East. And so Kahlil Gibran wanted his people to have autonomy. And so he spoke out a lot about that. And it got him really upset. He died at the age of 48 from complications, I believe is cirrhosis of the liver, complications associated with alcoholism. Tender-hearted poet and painter and political activist. So when he says, "You who walk facing the sun, what images drawn on the earth can hold you? You who travel with the wind, what weather vane shall direct your course?" Okay, when he's talking to us like that, when he says, "What man's law shall bind you if you break your yoke, but upon no man's prison door?" When he says, "What laws shall you fear if you dance, but stumble against no man's iron chains? Who is he that shall bring you to judgment? If you tear off your garment, yet leave it in no man's path." When he asks us at the end, who shall command the skylark not to sing? That's not just coming from some poet sitting on a velvet shade lounge getting, money from his benefactress and just with the flick of a quill. He was really putting himself out there as a dissident in his life. It took 11 years to put this book together, and he did it with the help of a benefactor and editor. But it's all here. So I want to give him that respect and put that weight on these words. It's not just, it's a person who put his butt where his mouth is, and yeah, he died young. It's up to us not to die young if we can help it, because the youth, they need elders, and the elders need experienced middle-aged people to bridge and help them go over, because they can't leave in good confidence without passing the mantle on to those of us willing to take it up in wisdom and dedication to freedom and liberation. Because historically, generationally, most of our ancestors, even those of us, who are European, those of you of European descent. No, I did the ancestry thing, you guys. That's a whole different conversation, kind of. But we're all related. I already said that. But, the Irish and the British and the, there's indigenous people over there that been fighting the occupation of Rome. Man, the Romans. Ugh. It's just, we're all on a path looking for freedom. All of our ancestors want vindication. And how do we get sustained vindication? But by learning from our mistakes. So, Kahlil Gibran is saying, people of Orphalese, you can muffle the drum and you can loosen the strings of the lyre. But who shall command the skylark not to sing? They can imprison you. They can cut off TikTok. They can trick you with, don't let them trick you. But I saw an influencer say the other day, she is with a team of people who work for people with disabilities rights. And she was saying that they're not going to go off of Facebook. And this was a black woman as well. She's like, I'm not going off Facebook because we have people, that's all they know how to use. And we need to have accessibility. And so those of us who are fortunate enough to be tech literate and we can skip and jump all around, who's protecting the people that are left behind? This is the stumbling stone thing. So they trying to loosen the strings and muffle the drum. But who can command the skylark not to sing? That's yourself, and that's God. That's your God self, and that's, the creator. That's the only people. Maya Angelou, I know why the caged bird sings. But still, the caged bird can still sing. It might not be able to fly, right? But it's this whole doggone tragic acceptance of the tyrant. I like this whole part. I got a whole little outline of the whole part where Kahlil Gibran is talking to the people who are making the laws. And the old serpent who can't shed his skin and calls others naked and shameless. Or the one who comes early to the wedding feast and when overfed and tired goes his way, saying all feasts are violation and all feasters lawbreakers. Isn't this the funny thing when we love to see the homophobia in the GOP, and then you find out that they've been, speaking of ancient Rome, just reveling in little boys. It's so gross. You know what I mean? Their shadow side, they're obsessed with it, but not taming it. And I don't know. It's just, this is interesting that we've been looking at these same things for centuries. What is the sun to them but a caster of shadows? They see only their shadows, and their shadows are their laws. Is when we get into this whole thing of God is on my side. The sun is the most ancient god. The sun is the most ancient god, and the moon, the other luminary, is equally as important. I can't tell you chicken or egg who came first, day or night, but I know that both of those situations, when you're in the void, the darkness, your little caveman brain is like, that luminary of the moon becomes so important. So important. Because on the dark moon, when she ain't there, it's terrifying. And if all the things that we require from the sun, warmth, food, heat, energy, all of these, light, right? So when we talk, when Kahlil Gibran is bringing out the point that that the sun to them is but a caster of shadows, is these religious and political leaders who, look at God and say, God's on my side. God reflects, I have these same values, and therefore my laws are just. I'm going to smite you from God's shadow, from my shadow. It's just inaccurate. It's just ego gazing. And what is to acknowledge the laws but to stoop down and trace their shadows upon the earth? But you who walk facing the sun. So don't stoop down. That's the civil disobedience part. I'm like, he's just asking, hey, what is it to acknowledge these laws but to stoop, to lower ourselves? And we go to the unjust laws part that we learned with the knock at midnight and Martin Luther King's work and things. He cut it real clear. We are obligated to disobey unjust laws, whatever that means to you. Whatever that means to you. Protest, civil disobedience, whatever it means to you. I don't know if this is propaganda. I don't know if it's legal or not. But they ain't at the door yet. They ain't at the door yet. Not here. So, love for your brothers and sisters and non-gendered peoples. Love to all of everybody. In the Cab Radio is produced by Jada White. Original theme music produced by Baby Weekend Boys and Icky Mac the Beat Jugular. Learn more at In the Cab Radio at Linktree. Thank you so much for tuning in.